I am sorry. I am sorry. Do not ever touch me, beggar.
In the town of Obirinla, people whispered her name long before she arrived. Amara. She walked as though the earth had been laid specially for her feet. Her wrappers were always neat, her jewelry bright in the sun, her head held higher than anyone else's. Men stared, women murmured, children stopped playing when she passed. Amara knew, and she loved it. Her beauty had opened doors early in life. Traders gave her discounts, young men fought for her attention. Even elders smiled nervously when she spoke. Over time, admiration hardened into something darker inside her, a sharp, glittering pride. She hated delays. She hated correction. She hated people who moved too slowly in front of her. If a seller made her wait, she snapped. If someone brushed against her wrapper in the crowd, she shouted. If a woman dared speak back to her, Amara's voice rose so high the whole market would turn to look. "Are you blind?" she once barked at a porter who stumbled near her basket. The man apologized. She scoffed and walked away. In Obirinla, people had started to learn a quiet rule. Do not cross Amara. Her mother tried, once. Pride walks faster than legs, the old woman warned gently while plaiting her daughter's hair one evening. Slow your tongue. Amara laughed. Mother, people respect strength. If you let them climb your head, they will never come down. Her mother sighed, fingers pausing in the braid. From then on, she said no more. Market days were Amara's stage. Drums thudded in the distance. Women shouted prices over piles of tomatoes and peppers. Smoke from roasting corn curled into the air. Goats bleated between baskets. Sweat and palm oil and dust mixed beneath the hot sun. Amara loved walking through it all, slowly so everyone would notice. That afternoon, the heat pressed down hard, shimmering above the red earth. Traders fanned themselves with cardboard. Children chased each other between stalls. Amara adjusted her beads and stepped into the thickest part of the crowd. "Make way," she snapped at a boy carrying yams. He jumped aside. She smirked. Near the cassava sellers, someone suddenly stumbled in front of her. An old woman. Her back was bent like a question mark. A thin walking stick trembled in her hand. A black nylon bag hung from her wrist, sagging with unknown things. Sweat streaked her wrinkled face as she fought to keep her balance. For a moment, it looked like she might fall. People slowed. A few turned. Amara did not. Her face tightened. "Watch where you're going," she said sharply. The old woman tried to steady herself, fingers gripping the stick. Her lips parted as if to apologize. That was when her foot slipped again. She brushed Amara's wrapper, just lightly. Amara's eyes flashed. "Are you mad?" she shouted. The market hushed. The old woman blinked up at her, startled. I'm sorry, my daughter." Before the words could settle, Amara shoved her. The walking stick flew from the woman's hand. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The old woman crashed onto the dusty ground, the black nylon spilling beside her. Amara did not stop. She stepped forward and slapped her. A sharp sound cut through the air. "You useless old woman, can't you see, or poverty has blinded you?" People murmured. Someone whispered, "Ah." Amara pointed at her. "Where are your children? If you had sense, they would be carrying you instead of you disturbing people." The old woman stared up at her, stunned. Amara's voice sharpened into something cruel. "Or is it witchcraft that has kept you alone?" Silence fell heavy. Traders froze. Buyers clutched baskets. Even the goats seemed to quiet. Slowly, very slowly, the old woman sat up. Dust clung to her wrapper. Her hands trembled as she reached for her stick. Tears slid down her cheeks. Amara watched her and smirked. Then she turned and walked away, hips swinging, leaving murmurs and shocked faces behind her. Behind her, the old woman sank back onto the ground. Her voice came out broken. "Daughter!" Amara did not turn. The old woman wiped her face and looked after her. Her eyes were not angry. They were heavy and wet and full of something that made the nearby traders shift uneasily. She lifted her face to the sky. "My tears will follow you. You will learn what it means to beg for joy." A wind passed through the market. Some swore they felt it. But Amara was already gone, laughing with a friend at the pepper stall, the afternoon swallowing her cruelty like nothing had happened at all. The market continued to bustle around her. Women shouted their prices, men haggled over yams, and children darted between baskets of tomatoes. Amara walked slowly, deliberately, so everyone could see her beads glinting in the sun and her wrappers swaying just so. She enjoyed the attention. Every gaze, every whisper, every eye following her felt like a crown. "Did you see her?" her friend whispered. "She thinks she owns the world," another replied. Amara smirked without turning back. "Let them watch, let them whisper. They only make me shine brighter." Days passed like this, each market day feeding her pride. Amara's beauty and sharp tongue became legendary. She insulted anyone who displeased her, a careless trader, a child who stumbled near her skirts, even women who dared glance at her sticks. Yet she felt no remorse. Every insult was a proof of her power. Every fear in someone else's eyes was a thrill she carried home. At night, she returned to her modest house, but even there she practiced walking with her head held high, perfecting her posture, smoothing her wrappers, brushing her hair until it shone. She liked seeing herself in the mirror, not for vanity, she told herself, but for reminding herself she was unmatched. Weeks turned into months. People began to avoid her wrath in the market. Some moved aside before she even arrived. Some whispered prayers under their breath, hoping not to attract her anger. Amara laughed at them. Let them whisper. I am untouchable. Even her family learned to keep quiet. Her mother would shake her head at her pride, but Amara only waved her off. "Mother, I am born to stand above," she would say. The memory of the old woman at the market, the one she had pushed, slapped, and mocked, was already fading. In her mind, it was just another face in the crowd, old and weak. Nothing more, she told herself. It was dust and cries. I am beyond it. Yet sometimes, when she laughed too hard or strutted too close to the sun, she would catch something in the corner of her eye, a shadow, a bent figure moving behind the baskets. Every time she turned sharply, ready to scold, and found nothing, just the market carrying on. And though she never admitted it, her heart skipped just a little when it happened, just a little. Old women, children, fools, they have no power, she whispered to herself. I am Amara. I am untouchable. The afternoon faded, sun lowering over the red earth, painting long shadows over the pepper and tomato stalls. Amara's laughter rang out one more time before she finally headed home. She passed the same spot where the old woman had fallen weeks ago, but it was empty. Nothing stirred except for the wind brushing the dust. And yet, in that dust, for a fleeting heartbeat, Amara could have sworn she saw eyes watching her. She shook her head and continued. It's nothing, she told herself. Just dust. Weeks passed. Months passed. Amara's beauty, her pride, her command over the market and the town's attention only grew. Everyone in Obirinlaw spoke of her, the way she walked, the way her laughter carried across the stalls, the way traders trembled at her sharp tongue. But now a new chapter awaited her, her wedding to Kolade, a wen wealthy beyond imagination, whose family held respect across the region. The announcement alone sent waves through the town. Women whispered in markets, children stopped their play to listen, and even elders shook their heads with quiet unease. Amara is unmatched. She has triumphed over everyone and everything. For weeks, the town buzzed with excitement. The wedding decorations glimmered in sunlight, silk drapes of gold and red, intricately carved chairs, baskets of flowers, and rows of polished plates waiting for the feast. Amara floated through it all, every step deliberate, every smile practiced. Her dress was made of the finest lace, her beads sparkling, her hair plaited in perfect braids. Her friends fawned over her. "You will be the most beautiful bride this town has ever seen," they whispered. She smiled, letting the praise wrap around her like a cloak. "They are right. No one is like me." The morning of the wedding arrived. Sunlight spilled across the village square as drums rolled in a slow, measured beat. Guests from near and far gathered, some coming just to catch a glimpse of Amara. She walked down the aisle with confidence, every eye following her. Kolade waited at the altar, his expression calm, yet his eyes held a hint of awe. The priest spoke solemnly, the villagers watched in silence, but all Amara could feel was the world bowing, just for a moment, to her. She laughed softly in her mind. This is perfection. Everyone will remember this day. The feast was lavish. Plates of roasted meats, rice, and fruit decorated long tables. Music played, drums beating in rhythm with dancing feet. Guests cheered every time Amara appeared, every time she smiled or laughed. It was the kind of day that became legend. People would tell stories about it for years, and Amara knew it. She drank in every compliment, every glance of envy or admiration. Even in her joy, a faint memory brushed the edge of her mind. The old woman at the market, sitting in dust, looking up at her with tears. She shook it off. That was nothing. It is all behind me. Yet, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, a soft wind stirred the courtyard. It whispered through the drapes, lifted dust across the stone floors. For a moment, Amara thought she saw a bent figure at the edge of the crowd, but when she blinked, there was no one, just laughter, music, and celebration. She smiled again and turned toward Kolade. Life is perfect. The town talked about Amara's wedding long after the last drums went silent. For weeks, women compared her lace. Men argued about the cost of the feast. Children replayed the dances in the dust. Traders swore they had never seen so much food laid out in one place. Amara heard every story, and she loved them. She walked through Obirinlaw with a new air now, no longer just admired, but elevated. Wives greeted her with careful smiles, young girls stared openly, even elders nodded when she passed. She was no longer simply Amara, she was Madam Amara. Kolade spared no expense. Their home was large, painted freshly, with flowering shrubs lining the compound. New furniture arrived almost weekly. Soft rugs covered the floors. Plates of fine china replaced the old, cracked ones. Amara filled the rooms with laughter and perfume. Visitors came often, friends, relatives, distant cousins suddenly eager to reconnect. They praised her house, her husband, her clothes. "You married well," they told her. She tilted her head, smiling. Of course. Their life glowed like a lamp set on a hill. It began quietly. At first, it was nothing more than friendly teasing. At a family gathering, an aunt laughed as she served food. "Madam Amara, now that you are settled, when will we start hearing baby cries in this house?" Everyone chuckled. Amara smiled, waving her hand. "Let me enjoy my marriage first." No tension, no worry. Yet, Later that night, while removing her jewelry, she paused at her reflection, just for a second. Then she shook her head. Another time, a neighbor touched her arm lightly while greeting her. "You look well, my daughter," the woman said. "Marriage has treated you kindly." Then, after a brief pause, added softly, "Children will crown it." Amara laughed, too quickly. "They will come." The woman nodded, but her eyes lingered. That night, Amara lay awake longer than usual, unease in silence. Months slid by in comfort and fine living. Still, the questions returned, always wrapped in smiles. "Any news yet? Are you not tired of traveling without carrying a baby on your back? When will we prepare naming ceremony rice?" Each time, Amara brushed them aside. Each time, they stayed with her longer. The husband's gentle look. Kolade did not pressure her, not directly, but sometimes she caught him watching children play in the street, his face thoughtful. Once, while visiting a friend whose wife had just given birth, Kolade held the baby longer than necessary. Amara noticed. She said nothing. Her sleep was no longer smooth. She dreamed of crowded markets where people whispered behind her back, of dust swirling at her feet, of an old walking stick tapping slowly on the ground. She always woke before seeing a face. Always. She told herself it meant nothing. One evening, while dressing for a dinner party, Amara overheard two women in the next room. "She is lucky," one said. "Yes," the other replied softly. "Time is watching." Amara froze, earrings halfway to her ears. Then she straightened and smiled at her reflection. Let them talk. But the whisper followed her all the way out of the room. At first, Amara told herself that people talked too much. Women always whispered, elders always asked questions, neighbors always counted months and seasons as if every marriage came with a timetable. She refused to let it touch her. Life remained beautiful. Kolade's business flourished. New vehicles appeared in their compound. Guests continued to visit with gifts and praise. Amara hosted dinners in flowing gowns, laughing loudly, clinking glasses, pretending the sideways glances meant nothing at all. Whenever someone asked about children, she answered lightly. "Good things take time." She said it so often it became a song. But months rolled into a year, then another. The questions grew less playful. At family gatherings, conversations would pause when she entered. Women exchanged quick looks before forcing smiles. Kolade's mother began sitting closer to her than before, studying her face carefully. "You are eating well," the older woman said. "You rest enough?" Amara nodded. "Good. A woman must keep her body ready." The words were gentle. The meaning was not. At night, Amara counted months in silence. She watched her friends grow round with pregnancy, one after another. She attended naming ceremonies, carried babies on her back, smiled until her cheeks hurt. When she returned home, she sometimes locked herself in the bathroom longer than usual. She stopped laughing quite as loudly, only a little. Kolade suggested a hospital visit carefully, as though testing thin ice. "Let us just check," he said one morning, "for peace of mind." Amara agreed quickly, too quickly. The doctor smiled politely. Tests were done. More tests followed. Nothing was clearly wrong. "Relax," one said. "Stress can delay things." So she drank herbal mixtures from well-meaning aunties. Bitter roots, dark liquids, powders mixed with pop. She swallowed everything. Still, nothing changed. The pressure thickens. Kolade's mother stopped pretending. "Do not be angry, my daughter," she said one afternoon, "but 15 years is not 15 days. Amara stared at her. "We are still young," she replied sharply. The older woman sighed. "Youth does not stop time." That night, Amara cried for the first time in her marriage, quietly, so Kolade would not hear. One evening, as rain hammered the roof, Amara sat alone by the window. Lightning flashed. For no reason at all, her mind drifted to the market. Dust, a walking stick, tears sliding down wrinkled cheeks. She shook her head violently. Why now? Later that week, a neighbor visited carrying her newborn. As Amara held the warm, sleeping child, something twisted painfully in her chest. The baby stirred. Amara blinked fast. She handed the child back and turned away. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, a question she had avoided for years finally formed clearly in her mind. What if this is not ordinary? The question refused to leave Amara's mind. What if this is not ordinary? It followed her into the kitchen while servants prepared meals. It followed her into her room while she folded silk wrappers she no longer admired the way she once did. It sat beside her in the car when Kolade drove in silence, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. She did not say it aloud. Saying it would make it real. Kolade tried to remain gentle, but strain crept into his voice. "You should not carry this alone," he told her one night. Amara forced a smile. "I am fine." But he had begun avoiding her eyes when relatives called. His phone rang more often. His mother, his uncles, family elders. Conversations ended quickly when she entered the room. Once, she overheard his aunt say, "A house without children grows cold." Kolade snapped back. Enough. But the words had already landed. A growing isolation. Amara stopped attending naming ceremonies. She avoided baby showers. She smiled less in public. In mirrors, she no longer admired herself. She searched. Her beauty remained, but something else stared back at her now. Worry. The dreams grew clearer. She stood in the market alone, baskets overturned, dust swirling. A walking stick tapped behind her. Tap, tap, tap. She turned, and always woke up. Sweat soaked her wrapper. Her heart raced in the dark. One afternoon, an old school friend named Zainab visited. They drank tea in the shade. "You are quiet these days," Zainab said gently. Amara shrugged. "Marriage matures people." Zainab studied her for a moment, then lowered her voice. "Have you offended anyone deeply?" Amara stiffened. "What kind of question is that?" Zainab hesitated. "Sometimes, when things refuse to move, it is not medicine that is missing." Amara laughed too sharply. "You sound like those village prophets." But her fingers trembled around the cup. A thought she cannot kill. That night, she lay awake. Zainab's words echoed. "Have you offended anyone deeply?" Her mind reached backward through years. Arguments, insults, faces she had forgotten. Then, dusk, a black nylon bag, a woman sitting on the ground. Amara sat up suddenly. "No," she whispered. She tried to sleep. She could not. The next morning, she almost told Kolade. The words rose to her throat. There was a woman at the market. She swallowed them. How foolish would she sound? Still, the memory would not fade. For the first time in 15 years, Amara wondered if that market afternoon had not ended the way she thought. That evening, Kolade came home later than usual. He sat beside her slowly. "My mother spoke again," he said. Amara closed her eyes. "There is a priest in the city," he continued. "People say he prays for women who cannot conceive." Her chest tightened. She nodded, but inside, fear whispered something else. "This has followed me for years." The city church was larger than any Amara had visited in years. Its tall walls rose pale against the sky, crosses gleaming in the sun. Cars filled the compound. Women sat under trees clutching handbags and hopeful faces. Some murmured prayers, others stared into space. Amara walked slowly beside Kolade. For the first time in her life, she felt small, waiting among the desperate. They joined a quiet line near the parish office. A woman with tired eyes held a toddler on her back. Another wiped tears from her cheeks. An older couple whispered to each other with bowed heads. Amara's throat tightened. So many of us, she thought. When it was finally their turn, a young catechist ushered them inside. "Father will see you shortly." The priest's eyes. The priest was not old. Gray streaked his hair, but his eyes were sharp and calm. He listened while Kolade spoke carefully. Years of waiting, hospitals, herbs, pressure from family. The priest turned to Amara. "And you, my daughter?" Amara opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She forced a smile. "We have tried everything." He watched her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Sometimes the body is not the only place a wound hides." Her heart thudded. "Is there anyone," he continued gently, "you have hurt deeply and never sought forgiveness from?" Amara's hands tightened in her lap. "No," she said too quickly. The priest did not argue, but his gaze remained steady. "Search your life carefully," he added. "Unhealed wounds have long shadows." That night, the dreams returned stronger than before. She stood in the market again. This time, the old woman's face was clearer. Tears streaked her cheeks. Her lips moved. "My tears will follow you." Amara woke up screaming. Kolade rushed to her side. "What is it?" She shook her head violently. "Nothing." But her pillow was wet. The next day, Amara finally spoke. "There was someone," she whispered while they sat together in the living room. Kolade looked up. "A woman at the market, years ago." Her voice shook. "I pushed her, slapped her, insulted her." Kolade said nothing. "She cried," Amara continued, "and said words, strange words." He stared at her. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "I didn't think it mattered." She pressed her palms together. "I think it does." The priest's warning. They returned to the church. This time, Amara spoke everything. The priest closed his eyes when she finished. "You must seek her," he said quietly. "If she lives, beg her forgiveness." "And if she is dead?" Amara asked. His voice softened. "Then find her resting place. Humility travels even there." That evening, Amara stood alone in her room. 15 years of pride weighed on her chest. She whispered to herself, "I will find her." The road back to the old market felt longer than Amara remembered. Kolade drove in silence while she stared out the window, watching familiar villages slide past, places she had not thought about in years. Each bend in the road tightened something in her chest. This was where she used to walk proudly. This was where she had laughed. Now her hands trembled in her lap. The market that remembered. The market was still alive, loud, colorful, crowded, but not the same. New stalls stood where old ones once were. Children who would have been toddlers that day now argued over prices. Faces had changed. Amara stepped out slowly. Dust rose under her shoes. Her heart pounded. She walked to the cassava sellers. Nothing. To the pepper stalls. Nothing. To the narrow path where she remembered the woman falling. Still, nothing. She asked traders. An old man shook his head. "I don't know." A woman selling groundnuts squinted at her. That was long ago. Some stared at her suspiciously. Some waved her away. Days of searching. They returned again the next day. And the next, Amara questioned anyone who looked old enough to remember. An elderly woman with a walking stick, black nylon bag. Most frowned. A few murmured. No one could place her. Hope thinned. On the 5th day, as Amara sat under a mango tree fighting tears, a thin woman approached. "I heard you asking about an old beggar," she said quietly. Amara jumped to her feet. "Yes, please." The woman studied her. "You are the one who slapped her, aren't you?" Amara swallowed. Yes, the woman sighed. I was bare. Amara's knees weakened. Come, the woman said. If it is her you seek, I know where she lived. They walked far from the market, past footpaths and cassava farms, until they reached a crumbling hut near the bush. Its roof sagged, weeds crawled over the entrance. Silence pressed heavily around it. She lived here, the woman said. Amara's chest tightened. Lived? She whispered. The woman nodded slowly. Yes. She married years after that day. Had 2 children. Amara exhaled in relief, then froze. They died, the woman continued softly. All of them. Fever took them within weeks. Amara staggered. And she? Not long after. They walked to a small clearing behind the hut. 3 small mounds, one larger. No headstone, just earth. Amara dropped to her knees. No. The world tilted. She had come to beg forgiveness and arrived too late. That evening, Kalade begged her to return to the city. She refused. She remained by the hut, watching the grave, listening to night insects. Her pride had carried her far. Now it had brought her back to dust. Amara did not leave. When Kalade returned to the city, promising to come back for her, she stayed behind at the edge of the bush where the hut leaned tiredly against the wind. The woman who had guided her there watched with worried eyes. You cannot sleep here, she warned. I can, Amara replied. Her voice was hollow. The first night. She slept on the hard floor of the hut, mosquitoes whining around her ears, the smell of rot and dust filling the air. She dreamed of the market again. This time no one was there, only footprints in the earth, leading to a grave. At dawn, Amara rose and began to clean. She swept years of dirt from the hut's floor, cleared cobwebs from the ceiling, washed torn wrappers she found folded in a corner. She carried water from a distant stream until her arms burned. She scrubbed pots no one would ever use again. Each movement felt like a prayer. I am sorry, she whispered as she worked, over and over. Villagers passed and stared. Some shook their heads. That is Kolade's wife. Yes, the proud one, they whispered, but Amara did not answer. On the 3rd day, Kolade returned. You cannot do this, he pleaded. Come home. She shook her head. Not yet. Why? I am not finished begging. He left, confused and frightened. Rain fell. She kept sweeping. Hunger clawed at her stomach. She ignored it. Her knees ached. Her palms blistered. Still, she cleaned. At the graves, she knelt until her legs shook. Forgive me, she begged. The 6th day. Her voice was gone. She barely slept. That night, she collapsed near the hut's doorway. The moon hung bright. She closed her eyes. She stood in the hut. The old woman was there. Not bent, not weak, whole. Her eyes were calm. My daughter, she said. Amara fell to her knees. I am sorry. I know. You ruined my life, Amara sobbed. The woman shook her head gently. Your pride wounded you long before my tears did. She touched Amara's forehead. I forgive you. Amara gasped. You will return home, the woman continued. Joy will visit your house. Then she faded like smoke. Amara awoke with sunlight on her face. Her body was weak. Her heart was light. She stood slowly and walked back to the graves. Thank you, she whispered. She did not know what waited in the city, But for the first time in 15 years, she believed hope might follow her home. Amara returned to the city quietly. No celebration, no announcements. She no longer shouted at servants. She no longer snapped at drivers. When neighbors greeted her, she bowed her head instead of lifting her chin. People noticed. She has softened. Yes, something touched her. Amara only smiled and kept walking. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. No signs, no sickness, no joy. Hope began to wobble. At night, Amara pressed her hand to her stomach and whispered prayers she had never learned before. Please. Kolade tried not to ask, but his eyes always did. 3 months after she returned from the village, Amara woke up dizzy. The room spun. She blamed hunger. Then she vomited. Her heart slammed against her ribs. No, she whispered. She sat on the bathroom floor, shaking. At the hospital, the nurse frowned at the strip, looked again, then smiled. Madam, Amara gripped the bed. Yes, you are pregnant. The world blurred. Kolade shouted. Doctors rushed. Tears fell before Amara could stop them. Even with the news, she trembled. What if it leaves me? She whispered to Kolade. He held her. We will wait. She waited every day, every scan, every appointment. Months crawled by. Pain came one rainy night. Sirens, lights, doctors shouting numbers. Hours blurred. Then, crying. Not 1, not 2, 3. Triplets. Kolade collapsed into a chair. Amara laughed and sobbed at the same time. When she was strong enough, she went back to the village. She cleaned the hut again, swept the compound, laid flowers by the graves. Every year after, she returned, quietly. Amara taught her children one lesson above all. Never mock the broken, never spit on dust, because the ground remembers.